And that's what I explained to Governor Rick Perry a couple months ago in Des Moines, Iowa, at the premiere of the film The Gift of Life with Governor Mike Huckabee. I'm one of the cast members of the film, so I had backstage passes to the premiere. And we had 4 presidential candidates speak at this event. One of them was Governor Rick Perry. And I handed him, like as I did with the other candidates, my DVDs, Conceived and Rape, A Story of Hope, and I'm sorry, that's my pamphlet, and then I handed him my DVD, Conceived and Rape, From Worthless to Priceless, the group DVD, Accepting Cases of Rape, 12 Stories of Survival. I gave him my business card, and I told him that I'm the national spokeswoman for Personhood USA. And the pledge had just come out 2 days before, and 2 of the candidates had already signed it, but he had not. And he was stunned. He said, this is your story? And I shared a little bit with him about it, and he said, can I have your autograph? And he said, no, I mean it. And he ripped off the cellophane, popped out the DVD, handed me a marker, and said, here, make it out to my daughter. So I wrote, 100% pro-life, Rebecca Kiessling. And then he asked me more questions, and I shared with him how my birth mother had gone to do back alley abortionists, and I was almost aborted, but I was legally protected. And he said, you know, you're my heroine. I said, oh, thanks, but you know, it's funny you say that, because my question for you is, would you be my hero? And I explained, as I did to you, that I'm alive today because of these pro-life leaders in Michigan who are my heroes. And I asked him, would you be my hero too? And he said, yes, yes, I would. And I said, but you make that rape exception. And he put his head down, he shook his head, and he said, wow, wow, this is so powerful. He wasn't ready to make a move yet. And I didn't know how much time I'd have. People were waiting to talk to him. I said, oh, I want to get a picture taken, but my battery's dead. And he said, oh, I have my own personal photographer. Come with me. And so he took a bunch of pictures, and he's looking at the pictures, and he kept saying, wow, I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine. And I looked up at him, and I said, you know, when you make that rape exception, that's like saying to me that I deserve the death penalty for the crimes of my father. The Supreme Court has said that he didn't even deserve the death penalty. There's no death penalty for rapists. He was nodding his head. I said, but you believe that I, the innocent child of rape, deserve the death penalty? And he said, no, no, I don't. I started saying, well, and then he stopped me, and he said, you know, tonight's event and this film is supposed to be all about changing hearts and minds. And right now, you're changing my heart. And I thought, changing? So I challenged him. I looked him in the eye and I said, no more exceptions. And he looked intently back and promised, no more exceptions. I thought, yes. And then he went on to say that he had never put a face to the issue. He had never considered it from the perspective of someone like me. He's the governor of Texas. You really think he had never heard the arguments before? And that shows again why it's so important to share these stories, not just mine, but others as well. And then, you know, I explained to him that I understand that when you make the rape exception, you want to be a person of compassion. You want to show that you care about rape victims. But it's based upon several fallacies. The first is that most rape victims would want an abortion or that they need an abortion. Nationally, your average unplanned pregnancy, over 50% abort. You ask people, what do you think it is for rape victims? Most people would say, oh, it's got to be like 90%, no, 95, right? 2 major studies have been done. It's 15 to 25% depending on the study. The majority of rape victims raise her child, not the rapist baby, her child. And 25% choose adoption. The ones who give birth express that there was something very healing of having something beautiful come out of something really awful. When he took and destroyed, she proved herself better than the rapist, and that child brought her healing. The ones who had the abortion overwhelmingly expressed that it was far more difficult to overcome the abortion than it was the rape, that it was yet another violent intrusion into her body after having already been traumatized. And that now they were no longer dealing just with what was done to them, but now what they had done to their own child. And that it was far more difficult to overcome the abortion than it was the rape. They're 4 times more likely to die within the next year after the abortion. They have a higher murder rate. The abortion often helps perpetuate an abusive relationship. Higher rate of suicide, drug overdose, domestic violence, divorce, depression throughout their lives, and on and on. So it's not even compassionate for a rape victim. If you really care about rape victims, you should want to protect them from the rapist and from the abortion, and not the baby. A baby is not the worst thing that could ever happen to a rape victim. An abortion is. But people just assume without ever having done the research. We know with incest that it is the perpetrator who is protected by the abortions. And even in cases of incest, if you want to protect her, you should make abortion illegal. So you can no longer be enabling the rapist to continue raping her and all the other young women in the household. Another thing that people would say to me is, oh well, you were lucky. And I explain this has nothing to do with luck. Oh, let me add one more thing, I'm sorry, about Governor Perry. The very next day, he went ahead and signed the personhood pledge. And then he went on national news 4 times talking about our conversation and how my story had pierced his heart. And so let me tell you, if you can change the heart of a governor during a presidential debate, presidential campaign, you can change the heart of anyone. It is fantastic to be equipped with all of the philosophical arguments, the legal arguments, the medical arguments, scientific. It's all on our side. But in the end, still, you cannot let people forget that we are talking about real people. People often say to me, well, you know, it's nothing against you personally. Oh yeah, but you know, it affects me personally. Easy for you to say. My friend Pam Senzel, who's an international abstinence speaker, she was also conceived in rape. She says that when people say that to her, she says, oh, well, you see, the thing is that I am a person. And so it is personal, and I will be taking it personally. Well, then people would say, oh, well, you were lucky, and I explained this has nothing to do with luck. This is just decisions that are made, choices that we all make every day. Whether you get involved, how you vote, and don't tell me that our brothers and sisters who are being aborted every day are somehow unlucky. What a cop-out. My birth mother went to 2 back alley abortionists, and I was almost aborted. The first she said was the typical back alley conditions that you hear about as to why she should have been able to safely and legally abort me. She said there was blood and dirt on the floor and on the tables. And those back alley conditions and the fact that it was illegal caused her to back out, as it did with most women. And then she got hooked up with a more expensive abortionist, once again through the rape counselor that the police had referred her to. She said that there were no pregnancy resource centers back then. But if there had been, she would have gone. And this time she was to meet someone at night in Detroit. Someone would approach her, say her name, blindfold her, put her in the back seat of a car, then take her and abort me, then blindfold her again and drop her back off. You know what I think is so pathetic? Is that I know that there are people out there who would hear me describe those conditions, and their response would just be, oh, like, it's just so awful that your birth mother should have had to have gone through that in order to have been able to abort you. Oh, like, that's compassionate? Because understand that they think that they're being compassionate. But that's pretty cold-hearted from where I stand, don't you think? Because that is my life that they're so callously talking about. She's okay, life went on for her, but I would have been killed through this brutal abortion. You know, they talk about how much they care about women. Well, I'm a woman, and they could care less about me. What good is my right to anything if I don't have my right to life? Well, the night that my birth mother was to abort me, she was prepared to go through with it. My aunt was to drive her, and she said she spoke with this abortion doctor on the phone, expressed concern for her safety. He called her stupid. She said, "Are you going to call me names? All right, just forget it." He went on to swear at her profusely, and she finally just hung up the phone. He called her back the next day to try to once again talk her into allowing him to take my life for $500. And the same conversation took place, and she hung up. I cannot even tell you what it feels like to know that somebody wanted to take my life so badly that he would even call back the next day. You know, for some people, their near-death experience is waking up out of a coma to find out that they were almost killed in an automobile accident. For me, this is my near-death experience. And the fact that I was younger doesn't make it any less real or any less significant. I wasn't lucky. I was protected. Legality matters. A lot of well-meaning Christians will say to me, "Oh, well, you see, God really meant for you to be here." But I know that God intends for every unborn child to be given that same opportunity. And it's not like I can stand up here and say, "Oh, well, at least my life was spared. I deserved it. Look what I've done with my life. And millions of others didn't." I can't do that. Can you? Can you just sit there and say, "Oh, well, at least I was conceived out of two loving parents. At least I was wanted. At least I'm alive, just whatever." Some of us are in need of heroes. And that is exactly what you have the opportunity to do here tonight. To be heroes for those whose lives you don't even know of their exact existence, but you can yet recognize that theirs are lives worth saving. That experience with domestic violence in my heart, domestic violence in my life, gave me a heart for families in crisis, so I ended up doing what I said I would never do, which is to become a family law attorney. That's all the yucky stuff. I was able to be a witness to people in my law practice every day when they had hit rock bottom. And I had women come in who were pregnant and being coerced into aborting by their boyfriends, parents, husbands, being told all kinds of things, that they could force an abortion, block an adoption, force an adoption. They'll kick her out, they'll get custody. Or the most common one is that this abortion money is the last dime you'll ever get from me. Post-abortion support groups are filled with women who say that they were told that very same thing and that they felt like they had no other choice. Women in unplanned pregnancies typically come in and they say things like, "I just can't have this baby right now." They know it's a baby. They don't sit there and say, "I just can't have this fetus right now." They know it's a baby. But again, they feel like they have no other choice. And I don't think it's being much of a feminist to sit there and say, "You're right, you can't. You couldn't possibly have the strength of character it takes to see this thing through. You can't. Oh, and I'm not going to help you." And they take their abortion money and they're nowhere to be found when they're dealing with the awful aftermath. And I find it so ironic that these so-called feminists are the first to argue that women are pretty much weak and pathetic and that they can't handle very much. No, you hear them say things like, "How can you expect a woman to have to carry a baby?" Whatever happened to "I am woman, hear me roar"? And now you gotta be afraid of a baby? And so what I like to say is that I educate and empower women like a true feminist. And I tell them, you are stronger than you think. You can have this baby. I will help you. And pregnancy centers like Birthright will help you. And that is really empowering women. We are the ones who empower women and truly care about women and help them. Well, God sent me a godly man of character who honored me throughout our courtship despite the horrible mistakes of the past. And my birth mother was included in our wedding invitation and walked down the aisle in our wedding as one of the mothers. If you ask her today, she will say that I am a blessing to her. And I think how different our society would be if everybody understood that truth that we see throughout Scripture, that every child is a gift, a blessing, a reward. Then when they'd hear a situation like mine, instead of saying, oh, how awful, you mean to tell me that woman was raped and she was actually forced to carry that child? Instead, they could say, wow, how good is God? You mean to tell me he rewarded her with the gift of that child's life to bring her hope and healing for the future? I was not adopted and raised in a loving home, but a very abusive home. My dad broke my nose when I was in high school. My mom was bipolar, very abusive. And things got really ugly in the last several years. And in order to protect my family into the future, my birth mother and her husband, a year and a half ago on her birthday, 22 years from the day we met, legally adopted me. And that was God showing himself in my life once again to be a father to the fatherless when I had been forsaken by my adoptive father. And that's my fairy tale ending. And you see, the truth is that I am a blessing to her. I honor her and I bring her healing. We have our two oldest are adopted. We chose to adopt first. I'm very pro-adoption. It's just that I had a very different situation with an abusive family. And we have 3 biological daughters as well. We also had a daughter, Cassie, our second adopted child, who was born with special needs, and she died in our arms at 33 days old. And let me tell you, it was an honor to take care of her. Cassie was precious. One of the greatest things that I've learned is that the rapist is not my creator, as some people would have me believe. My value and identity are not established as being a product of rape, but a child of God. And there are really no words that any person could say to me that could heal me, that could make up for what I've been through, what I learned. But when I read God's word on it, it spoke to the depths of my soul. Though my mother and father forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Who else is going to say that society will receive me? And a father to the fatherless is God in his holy dwelling. God sets the lonely in families. And we're told that it is in the spirit of adoption that we're all called to be God's children through Christ. Not second best, last resort, but God's first choice and meant for the body of Christ. And most importantly, I know, and I can teach my children that if you want to know what your value is, you want to know your worth, you don't have to prove your worth to anyone. But all you have to do is look to the cross, because that is the infinite price that he paid for your lives. He thought I was pretty valuable, not worthless, but priceless. I hope you know your own worth. When you can say that you are pro-life without exception, it's like saying, I get it, you matter, yours was a life worth saving. And now I hope you will take the opportunity here tonight to do the same for others. Thank you.